Welcome back to the final session of SSAS and MDX training on SQL Server 2016. So we discussed about a lot of functions, mainly time functions or date functions, and also we learned about the concepts, core concepts of MDX. What is level? What is member? What is an index? And so on. So when you have this information with you, then if you get a new function into MDX, or if you have any function which you may have to use, you just go through the syntax and you should be able to understand, you should be in the position to understand what parameters can be passed as input to the function and what can be expected as a result set. So that kind of, see, it's impossible to cover all the functions. There will be hundreds of functions adding on every release, or not on every release, but there'll be functions adding continuously to the MDX, right? So you need to know the core concepts, how to understand a function, how to understand the parameters that you can pass, and what kind of results that you can get, and so on. So let's see a couple of functions today, not the new ones, the old ones, and try to create some calculations, we worked on calculations, but using the functions, not the date functions, but the other functions. Now let's see how can we use the date functions to get the few results using few desired results using the calculations. So as usual, let me start with a simple query. Let's say, for example, profit on 0, comma, and I'll go with let's say year on 1 from wide world importers database. So if I execute it, it gives me all the information, and if I don't want to see the null values, then I can use the non-empty function, non-empty keyword. So let's start with the previous member. So for the profit, I want to show previous member. Like for example, for the year 2013, I want to show 2012 sales or 12 profit, and for 2014, I want to show 2013 profits. How can we do that? Let's add a simple calculated measure by using the previous member function. So with member pre as dot current member. So this current member will give you the previous member, whatever is the current member dot pre member will give you the previous member in the context. Like for example, if you go here, the previous member is 2013. For here, it's 2014. Well, for this row, it is 2015. So let's quickly see whether it returns the right value that we are looking for or not. So I'll call this pre both the measures, one calculated measure and the one regular measure. And you see it's all null because it's a member, it's not returning any text or integer value. So to see whether it's giving the right value or not, we can see by using the name value. If you select name, it gives you what is the previous member name. Here for the 2014, it is giving me 2013 and so on. Now the last row is showing unknown. The reason is I selected non-empty, but the whole row is not null, right? The whole row is not completely empty because here you have null, but here you have some value. That is why it is showing this value. In that case, how can you eliminate based on a particular measure? In that case, you can use non-empty function where you can specify a single measure or multiple measures. I want to filter all the calendar year to nulls. Okay, don't get if the value is null for one single measure. Don't look for all the measures that are there on the columns. Just look for one single measure. If profit is empty, then don't pull it. So now if you see the difference between the non-empty function and non-empty keyword looks for the whole row to be null, whereas non-empty function, you can specify what measure needs to be looked for the null value, and if a particular measure is null, you can eliminate it. Similarly, you can have multiple. In the second parameter, if you specify a set, then In this case, it will look for both the measures, and if both the measures are null, then only it will filter. So specifying all the measures in the second parameter of the non-empty function, okay, specifying all the members that are there in the columns in the second parameter of the non-empty function is equal to non-empty keyword. Or instead of this, you can simply take out this and use a keyword instead of a function. So that's the difference between function and keyword. Function, you will have an opportunity to filter the null values, the rows, by a single measure instead of all the measures that you are having on the column, on the mention on the columns. Now, this previous member is going to the previous member. How can I get that value there? So instead of this, I need to go for profit. So give me profit of the previous member. So if I execute it, they should give me profit of the previous year. Let's say here, this is 2014, but this value is 2013, and you see you're getting 2013 data. Similarly, this value will be here, and this value will be here. And if you have a next value, then the value will be shown here. Maybe in the unknown, this 2016 profit will be shown. Now, let's try to do the same using parallel period. So you guys know how the parallel period works, right? So the parallel period function will take two. The first one is the level. Let me select year. And I want to go back by, let's say, 2 years for the current member. Okay, so this function, if you see up to here, this function evaluates the parallel period. So it tries to get the previous member, 2 years before the current member. So the whole should be summed up. So let's see what value it's gonna return. So I created is incorrect with the member. Something is extra. What is that? Invoice hierarchy, profit, select, run complete. Executing query. The syntax at something is wrong. This is parallel period. This is started here and this is ended. We do have an extra, I think. Okay. And let me take out this. Let me execute this now. And if you see, when I execute it, I specified a parallel period from here to here. First, this will be evaluated. So when this is executed, it tries to get whatever the current member. It will go back by 2 years and get the member which is 2 years before the or 2 levels before. What you call 2 indexes before the current member. So for 2015, if you go back by 2 members, it goes to 2013. That is what it is showing here. For 2016, it shows 2014 data. Something like this. Or you can go in, you can go in future also. Let's say if I specify -1 or -2, it go 1 year in future and it gets that value. If you see here, 2014 data will be in 2013. So you can use this data this is how you can calculate. Now, what this can be used for? You can use this for year-on-year calculations. Let's say how much sales is increased compared to the last year. So the formula will be like previous year minus current year, which gives you the sales, the profit, the increase in the profit. Let's see how to do that. So if I go here, the current member, this should give me the current profit. Invoice.current member. This gives me the current profit minus previous year profit. So always it executes to give current year minus previous year. And if you see for the first row, it's returning the same value because the previous year is null. And for the second row, it gives the value of this minus this. For the third row, this minus this. And for the fourth row, it goes this minus this. So if the value is less, then it is going in the negative. So this is how you can use the increase in the profits. So there is a decrease in the profit for the year 2016 compared to the previous year 2015. So you're getting in the negative values. So if you want to get previous year to the minus current year divided by previous year to get the year-on-year growth, or current year, I don't remember the formula. Whatever the formula, you can use the same way. I have everything in one parenthesis, so this will be evaluated first and divided by, I can go for either previous year or current year value. Let's say, for example, if I go for previous year value, and this will give me current previous year minus current year value divided by previous year value. This gives me year on year. And if you see, this is showing in some decimals. So let me use the format string now. To format it, I can go for percent. So what you need to do when you have to write an MDX calculations is you have to understand the requirement. Here the growth is 100% because there is nothing in the previous year. Here it is 21%, here it is 9%, here it is minus 71%. So there is a decline in the profits. So this is how, step by step, try to understand what is the requirement and try to find out what function suits best for the requirement to meet the requirement. And then you can go step by step. First, like if you observe here, first I try to get the previous year value, and then I put the current year value. I subtracted it and divided by the previous year value. So this is how you can write calculations using the date. Any function that doesn't matter to the calculations. It can be string functions, or it can be lag lead functions, or it can be date functions. If you know the concept, and if you know the requirement, and if you can find out what function suits better to meet the requirements while creating the calculations, then you are good and you can easily write the calculations. So let's see. I mean, one important function what people use is to get the count. Let's say, for example, I don't have all these things. I mean, you guys asked me to get the count of the years in the hierarchy, and you have a count function. I don't need a percentage for that. So if you give the count function, this gives you the count of members that are available in the year. So this gives all the count, all the members that are available in the hierarchy. So now you can go for non-empty here. Non-empty of this, by which measure? I want to see by profit. And let's see how many it's gonna return. So this is gonna return 4 because it has only 4 values. I mean 4 years has the profit. So that is what, this is how you can get the count. Now let's do something. Previous year, I'm using the same old query which I've used to show the calculations using date functions. Now let's try to use this. So when I use instead of index, instead of hard-coded value, can I use this one? Let me try that. So it's executed, and first what it will do is this minus 4 years before 100%, this minus 4 years before 100, this minus 4 years before 4, not 5 years before 100, and this minus 5 years before 100. So it's all null. So that is why it is showing all all 100%. Now let's do a simple change. Okay, the change is, instead of giving the whole count, I'm giving -1. So now you see some change in the percentages. So here it tries to go back by 4 years and it's full. So this is comparing with this now, because 4 minus 1 is 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So that is why the calculation is this minus this divided by this, and you are getting a value of -22%. So if you know how to get a particular, let's say for example in this case the count returns an integer. So wherever you have an index, lag of index, lead of index, right? So you can provide this count. But before that you have to think, is it gonna help you? If that's gonna help you, you can use functions to get the index values too. So this is one part of the topic that I want to cover on the last day. The other part is the subqueries. So subqueries, subcubes. The subcubes is nothing but it's like a filter. It's like a where class. Okay. If you're familiar with the subqueries in SQL, this is more it's equal to that. But the subcube slices the cube and maintains the data in a subcube, and the outer query will be applied on the inner subcube. For example, select, if I go for profit on 0 from wide world importers. So this gives me, I'm asking the server to give the profit for the whole cube. Okay. Instead of whole cube, I can slice it. I can slice and get a part of it or piece of it. So that's it, that using the subcube option. So the subcube option will be like this. Starting from, you won't specify the cube name or, okay. Instead of that, you will have an inner select statement. So select, let's say I want to get only 2013 sales or profits. I can specify it on the rows or columns on 0 from. Here I'm specifying the cube name. So what will happen is, first this will be executed and it returns only 2013. And if I execute it, then it will be applying only on 2013 data and it will be returning the data. So this is how you can slice the cube before you execute the outer query. Like this, you can have n number of subqueries or subcubes. Let's say I copy the same one, and from I can have one more. Select, instead of 2013, let me select a month, Jan, on 0 from the cube name. So first the innermost will be executed and this will give you a month value, and then this outermost will be executed and it will give you that month, that year value or profit, whatever, and the outermost will be executed. So this is how you will get the data. Okay, let's see how, they should be getting the same. Well, I see some difference. Okay, this is the same. So this is how you can have n number of subcubes. So what will happen is the innermost will be executed first, and the next outermost, and then the outermost, and it goes until the outermost query. So the advantage is here you are slicing the cube into teeny cubes. So if you have a big cube like this, the whole cube, let's assume your wide world importers work database is this, then you are slicing a piece of it, which is Jan 2013. The outer query will be executed on this, and the outermost query will be executed on the same set. Okay, let's say you have year in the year, this part in here and this part in here. Let me change the query a little bit to explain it in a better way. So the innermost queries, the two queries I'm altering. So I'm giving this query in here, that member in here, and year 2013 in the innermost. Now if I execute it, this slices 2013 data, and this slices January data of the 2013, and then this returns the profit of the January 2013. So if you draw the same image, same cube image, let's say this is 2013 data. First this will be executed, and the outermost query, this query will be executed on this subcube, and it gets 2013 January data, and the outermost will be executed on this small subset of data. So this is the advantage. It improves the performance of your MDX query. So if you know the parameters, then you can slice it and you can make it as a subcube or a smaller cube before you execute the main query. And subcubes, the calculations cannot be cannot be evaluated or used inside the subcube. So the calculations are only for the outer. Let's say, for example, I have these calculations here. At least I never tried that. Let me try it. So if this is my inner query. If I give prev non-empty function, I'm using to the on the inner query. So the dimension pre was not found in the cube when the string pre was passed. So it is treating it as a dimension. And generally you can have an, I mean, even measures is a dimension, right? You know that the dimension or the hierarchy for the measures is measure. So it is looking for this in the cube and it won't be available. That is why I mean, remember this point, you cannot use your calculations in your parameter, I mean, in your subcubes. You can use the same here in the outermost query, even though you have subcubes defined in your MDX query. So here I'm going for profit and only 1 year data is available, and previous year calculation, if I go for it, will be always 100%. So this is how you can create. So subcubes and where class both are very useful. Where improves the performance and subcubes improve the performance even better. But in few cases, if you go by MDX, I mean, generated by the SSMS, it goes by subcubes. And as far as I know, there is only one disadvantage in using the subcube, or the main disadvantage using the subcube. The subcubes won't pass the date dimension values properly. The context of the date dimension will not be passed to the outer query. So let's say, for example, if you filter this data for 2013, and if you don't have that member in the outer query, then it will give you all year context instead of the 2013. So let me get an example for that. So see, when you have a date dimension or date member, okay, date member along with the non-date member attribute here as shown in the example. So this is one of the issue that I faced in one of the projects that I worked when I used the subcube. So the date context, if you see the context of this date, it gives you, let's say for example, if I give the invoice date dot hierarchy dot something, it gives me the year 2013 when I execute it. So the context of this calendar year will be perfectly set when I used it in the calculated member. But at the same time, I'm filtering the data for city. Okay, when I'm filtering the data for city, a particular city, and if I execute it, I mean, if I pass this city to the calculated measure to get the current member name, it gets all instead of the city name. So which means if I go here, if I selected the calendar year hierarchy, this is giving me 2013. The same way, oops, if I select the city, it should be, if I execute the city, it should be giving the city, but the context for all the calculations can't be set properly. Like for example, if you see now it's giving as upwards per, right? The context of it. But when I don't have it in my row, or sorry, in my column, sorry, in my rows here, and if I try to get the city, you see the difference. What is the context it is taking? So this current member can't be used for my calculations when I have data like this. So which means, let's say if I want to get the profit of it, if I give the current member dot profit, it will give a different value than what I expect from this calculated measure. So if I execute it, you see the profit is coming as 152528156, which is the profit of all the cities. But the inner cube, the subquery or the subcube, whatever I'm using, is slicing the data for a particular city. But still, the context will not be set properly. So to avoid this, what people will do is generally, whatever you have in the subquery, okay, they'll add the same in where class 2. So they do that in subquery to improve the performance, and where class to return the right data. So if I execute it here, let's see if this works. If you see the value of the current member is coming as 314191.2. So if you use only subcube, you may see some uneven data or uneven, mismatch of the data. So that is why if you go and try to browse the cube and see the query, let me show you an example by browsing the query, what I'm trying to explain so that you can easily understand. I'm browsing the cube now. and I'm going for profit. Okay, and I want to have two parameters. One is city, Abbotsburg. I'm adding it to the filter, and invoice date. Let's say I select 2013. Now, if you go to the query, this gives you perfect result. If I execute it, this gives you perfect result. And if you go to the query, and let's try to understand the query here. Let me remove unwanted stuff from this. So on columns, I need from, and this is the subcube, and you have 2013 specified here in the first subcube. This is the second subcube, and in that Abbotsburg is specified from. So this should return me the result, but if you see in the where class, he is again adding the same stuff in the where class. So the reason is the context of the all member will not be, the current member will not be properly set, it will be set to the all member instead of the member that you have selected in the city. So that is the reason you have to, in order to get the right results for all the calculated members and the measures that you have in your query, if you have multiple attributes selected like this in the to filter the data, multiple members selected like this to filter the data, then to improve the performance as well as to get the right data, you better use the sub select for along with the where class. Or the other option is you can simply avoid this subselect or subcube. So if you can see, the subcube is mainly used to improve the performance. If I don't use that, this gives me the right result. This is gonna give me the exact result that I'm looking for, and the context will be set perfectly for this. Let me show you that. So t comma, if I execute it, this gives me the right value. So the subcube, to improve the performance, people use this, but sometimes it won't set the right context. So this is the solution for that. So if you want to use the subcube as well as the where class, you can use a query, or you can write a query, something similar to this. So that's it from MDX sessions, and you can practice, you can ping me, you can mail me if you have any questions, or you'll come across lots and lots of functions, and you'll be using multiple functions in a single calculation, like 2 to 3, and also you can use 5 to 6 functions in one single calculation, or even more than that. So it'll be fun if you start practicing it, and if you start trying to create complex calculations. You can set a requirement for yourself, and you can try to achieve that calculation using MDX. That will be really fun. That's how you can learn MDX very easily. So that's it, guys. All the best, and anytime you can mail me, and you know my mail ID. So wish you all the best in your career. Thank you so much for joining the sessions, and I'll share the last video for your reference. Thanks again, and have a great day.